everyone, this is Terri A. Wilson, and I'm here with another pop-up interview. If you've seen my interviews in the past, thank you for coming back and watching this one. And if this is the first time you've been here, a pop-up interview is basically an interview between me and somebody that we choose, or I choose, or somebody who signs up, and we just sit and talk about books. I talk with authors, I talk with book bloggers, I talk with service providers, people who are working with books, basically and readers, anybody who just wants to talk about books. The best way that you can find out about my pop-up interviews is to hit the bell down below and subscribe to this channel. And right next to the bell is that little thumbs up. And so just go ahead and push the thumbs up because I know you're going to like this interview. And the reason I know you're going to like this interview is because I've been talking with this lady for about 2 minutes and I'm already in love with her. It's wonderful. So today's interview is going to be with Sharon Butchbinder, which we're going to talk about that name in just a minute because I just love that name. So Sharon, thank you so much for coming and joining with me today.
Thanks for having me today. I always love to talk books, and whether it's my books or somebody else's books or audiobooks, I mean, there's just so many great stories out there, and I love to talk stories and books with people. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I talked about this before we got started, but somebody with the name Butchbinder is destined to become an author.
I married into the name. I got lucky. My maiden name is Belle, so I should probably be selling door-to-door stuff. But either that or ringing, chimes. But the Bookbinder is the German spelling of B-O-O-K is how we pronounce it. But the funny story was when I got my doctorate in public health services sciences in University of Illinois, Lothians, many years ago. As I was crossing the stage, there was this German man who was struggling with all the names before me that were Chinese or Japanese or anything else. And oh my God, he mangled every name that came to him. And then he gets my name and he's so excited. He said, Dr. Sharon Butchbinder, and my family's like dying in the audience. So he was so excited. And I was happy for him because it was his moment. But yeah, I got really lucky. My husband's a great guy. He's very supportive of my writing. He's my first reader. We've co-authored textbooks, and so we're a good team when it comes to supporting each other and writing and reading and everything else.
What subject are your textbooks?
Well, it's something that just rolls right off your tongue. It's Introduction to Healthcare Management. It's, it's at the top of everybody's mind. We're all thinking, how can I get introduced to healthcare management? This is I really need to get to know. But actually, this is a textbook that's been around since, 2004. And we're going into our 4th edition, which is why it's uppermost on my mind. I'm doing the final edits on our submission for our publisher. And I have 3 great co-editors. But this book came out of a conversation with 2 teachers at a national meeting for healthcare management. And Nancy Shanks and I were having coffee. I like to tell people we were not drunk when we came up with this idea. We were actually having breakfast and coffee. And I think we were on our 10th cup of coffee. Maybe that was it. Maybe it was the caffeine. And I looked at her and I said, what are you using to teach your first course in healthcare management, the intro course? And she goes, well, I have this one, but I really don't like it. Well, what are you using? And I said, well, I have this one, but it's not really healthcare management. It's a business book. And I really don't like the fact that it's totally not healthcare. And so we went back and forth about 10 times, and we pretty much arrived at the situation was that there were books that were either so high up that our freshmen, junior students couldn't understand it, or so beneath them that it was like healthcare management for dummies. And so we wanted something that hit in the middle. And so we weren't finding that in the marketplace. So there was this great gap. And so I looked at her and I said, you should write a textbook. And she goes, no, you should write a textbook. And we went back about 10 times and we went, okay, we should write a textbook. And that morning we sketched out a table of contents on a napkin. It was one of those classic, we're going to do this on the back of a napkin stories. And we spent about a year and a half doing market research, talking to our audience, talking to our end users. And it panned out. Doing that homework was very important. And there was a saga, as there often is with a great book, about finding the right publisher. The first publisher that we went to was very well known in healthcare management, and they kept saying, no, 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 we don't think there's a need for undergraduate text. In the meantime, the undergraduate programs were growing like mushrooms, and the graduate programs were leveling off and going down. And so we're like, no, yeah, there really is a market. So they basically told us to revise and resubmit twice. And the second time I was in tears, and my husband said, you really need to look at a different publisher. Find a different publisher, because these people are not getting you. And so I was at a meeting, and there was this, it was a finance meeting, and I was told, that guy over there is taking pitches. You need to go talk to him. And so I walked up to him and I said, I hear you're taking pitches for books. And I had my proposal, my 20-page proposal with, comparative market analysis and all this numbers crunching and everything else. And I said, is that true? And he goes, he was reading the newspaper. He dropped the newspaper. He grabs his chest. He goes, oh my God, if you have a book proposal, you just saved me from this horrible meeting. Thank you. Give me that. Mike Brown became one of our dearest friends, still is. And he said, I'll get back to you in about 10 days to let you know what I think about it. And he got back to me in 3 days and said it was the best book proposal he'd ever read. And I had a contract in 7 days.
Wow.
And Jones and Bartlett has been really, really good to me. And we're going into the 4th edition with that book. We've done cases in healthcare management. And before that, I did career opportunities in healthcare management. So my best-selling author status really is from my textbooks. My novels are award-winning. And occasionally I do get up there next to Stephen King in the ghost section. But the textbooks really are my calling card, my claim to fame. But I want to reach for the stars. I want my novels to get up there too. So, and the great thing about writing fiction, and pretty much coming back to it late in life, is that my fiction informs my nonfiction. So one of the things that people say about the textbook is, I'm keeping this book forever because it's such a good read. How often do people say that about textbooks? It's like, really? And they love the case. And case studies are like little stories of problems in healthcare management that people need to solve. And I've been teaching people how to use point of view and first, second, and third person and deep point of view, and how to use dialogue in writing cases. And it really makes the story of a scenario in healthcare that's gone wrong come to life. And that's my goal, is to really have the material be meaningful to the students and to the end users, and entertaining. And so that's what my goal is for writing novels as well. My romance, I hope, is entertaining, because I want people to open a book and just be swept away by the story and just dragged along by the hook, and then they're so sad when they put it down. So I want it for both.
So as I'm listening to you, a couple things have jumped out in my mind that I want to talk to you about. Number one, first of all, I never thought about how textbooks got put together. I never thought that anybody put any more thought into it than just slapping some facts together, putting some pictures and little quizzes at the end of the chapter.
That's pretty much the old way of doing it. Yes.
Well, and so I'm a former educator, taught high school, middle school, and college.
There you go.
I'm really encouraged to think that there are textbook creators, textbook authors who are out there thinking about what is it that we need to accomplish in this book besides just basic facts. So number one, I applaud you for that.
Oh, thank you.
So, and then the second thing you mentioned, you did a lot of market research. And I think that is applicable even to fiction writers, and even more so in fiction writers, to know your audience. I write romance, and I write adult romance. It's not necessarily erotica, but it's also not closed door. And so one of the things we're always talking about is, like, with book covers. What are the book covers that the readers are expecting to see versus the book covers that we want as authors for our story to be. And you go out and you find out what your readers are looking at, you find out what they want, and it's important. I think it's really important. It's also important,
Absolutely critical.
We can have this whole argument, and I'm sure there's probably somebody watching this who's cringing right now about, well, this is what I want to write, and this is my artistic style. So you have to balance all of that. And it seems like with what you're talking about, the old way of doing textbooks, the new way of doing textbooks, you kind of found a good balance between that, which I can almost guarantee transferred over into your romance books.
Absolutely. The marketing work that I did for my nonfiction has informed my fiction marketing. I've also been extraordinarily, I have a gift from Jones and Bartlett. I can't say their name enough because they've been so good to me. Because I've been able to be involved in the artistic piece of the branding of the book. I was the one who came up with the idea of the wave, and that's our brand. And I actually wanted the woodcut. Hasekawa is a Japanese woodcut with the classic wave. And they said, nah, I don't think we can get the rights to that, but how about this? And so they came up with the North Shore Pipeline from Hawaii. And that wave has been on all of my textbooks except for the first one, Career Opportunities. And so every edition of the textbook has some form of this gigantic wave. And people are like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, it's change. Yeah. And you have to ride the wave. And if you don't ride the wave, you are going to drown. And so, it really, I think it speaks to people. The covers are beautiful. And I've been lucky with that. And I've been very lucky in terms of working with great editors and great copy editors. And so I've been, and there's a give and take. And we educate each other as we go along. So it's not like my way or the highway. It also helps that we have the best-selling book in healthcare management in the world. So that gives us a little bit of clout,
Congratulations on that. You also talked about something which I think a lot of authors need to know about, and that is you were working with a publisher that just wasn't working out.
Yeah.
And sometimes I recently watched an interview with an author who's a USA Today bestseller and stuff like that. And she was saying the number one mistake she made was that she went with the first publisher that came along. Mm-hmm. And she didn't do her research. She didn't know about it. And that's a good story for all of us to hear, is that if you are working with a publisher and it doesn't work out, you don't feel good about it, they're making you upset, they're making you cry, for goodness sake, back out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I did when I started in the fiction world. I'll never forget, I received 2 acceptance emails for 2 different stories. One was for an erotic novel, and the other was for Kiss of the Silver Wolf, which was my first novella. Mm-hmm. And the werewolf story. And they arrived literally the same day in 2010. And I was so excited. One was from the Wild Rose Press and one was from an erotic publisher. I accepted them both. I just like, oh my God. And I signed everything and I sent it back. Well, it was a tale of 2 publishers, because I went to get my rights back for the erotic story because I wanted it to be part of a trilogy that I had written. And I was told, oh, no. You signed your rights away in perpetuity. You will never get your rights back to this story. It's mine forever.
Oh, wow.
And I have never seen more than $1.50 in royalties from that book. And I know it's earned more than that because I bought lots of copies when it first came out and gave it out to friends. Mm-hmm. So, it's, and there's no way to pursue it legally. I know a couple authors did attempt to do that, and they just threw away buckets of money, and this publisher is still out there, and they have not been labeled predatory by Romance Writers of America, which astonishes me. But the other one, the Wild Rose Press, which has been extraordinarily good to me, Initially, the contract was for 2 years, and just recently they switched to 5-year contracts, which I think is wise. But they do everything with great transparency, great openness. One of the things I love about the Wild Rose Press is I can literally, if I want to make myself crazy, I can go online every single day and see if I've sold a book. And now I will tell you, Kindle, Amazon, and Barnes and Nobles, they don't dump their data every day. But if I just need to do that, excuse me, I can go online and the records are right there. I can look at my track record from day one when I started with the company. I don't know too many other companies that give you that kind of transparency and data.
I haven't heard that. And I've been talking to a lot of authors.
It's very unusual, very unusual.
Now, I see over on the side, you've got these posters hanging up off of a bookshelf or something.
These guys?
Yeah, what are those?
Those are my covers. My covers for this is the Haunting of Hotel LaBelle, Legacy of Evil, and Eye of the Evil. It's my Hotel LaBelle series. And they are part of a series that's set in Montana. It started out as a call from the Wild Rose Press for a ghost story. And of course, it had to be a romance. And I was always fascinated by the ghost of Mrs. Muir. But I was also fascinated by, we love historic hotels. And so we have always tried to go to unusual sort of boutique-y places, not necessarily B&B, Airbnb, but other places like that where you can just sort of get to know the owners and spend time. We like haunted hotels, so we seek them out. And so, because I have a whole another paranormal side to myself, but so I came up with this idea of this hotel, a Victorian hotel in Montana, Billings, Montana, which I'd never been to when I wrote the first book. I had to do so much research because I knew nothing about that part of the world. Meantime, we've traveled there. We're going there a third time this summer, and it's just as spectacular as I thought it was going to be. But I created this hotel, and the story is about, and I also, people have teased me so much about, and I've had the good, bad, and ugly stories when I travel, that I should be a hotel inspector in my spare time because I have so much spare time. So I created the character of Tallulah, who was a hotel inspector, and she's worked in the service industry, for many years, and she starts her own business, and she gets called out to Hotel LaBelle by the current owner, and the hotel is a disaster. And she travels with her pug. Her pug, Franny, goes with her everywhere. So the pug is really an integral part of the story. And so she gets there, and the current owner is this real sleazy, creepy guy. And she's like, I'm leaving because you're so sleazy, creepy. And she's mad because she didn't get her money up front. Lesson learned, I didn't get my money. And the guy begs her to stay, and he really needs her help. And he does, because the place is a mess. And she says, all right, well, I'll stay one night and then we'll see how it goes. So she goes in and she locks her door and puts the chair under it because he's that creepy. And yeah. And she comes out of the shower and she's beat. She's been driving all day. And there's a dapper man with a mustache sitting on her bed. And she says, who the hell are you and what are you doing in my room? And he goes, you can see me? And so that's how the story starts. And he actually is not dead. He's in limbo. And he's been cursed by a Native American medicine woman who was angry at him for loving his hotel more than he loved her daughter, his wife. So that was a fun story to write. And once I did all the research, it came really quickly. And so Legacy of Evil is the second in the series, and that one centers around a Native American woman named Emma. And there's a lot of Crow history and mythology in my stories. And Crow people are fascinating. It's a matriarchal society. The women are treated as equal. They've had women chiefs. The people are amazing, just fascinating people. And they have this great mythology of all these paranormal stories and spirituality. So I'm able to weave that in there. And so Emma is the sister of BURT Blackfeather, who is the director of a special paranormal agency within Homeland Security. It's the Division of Anomaly, what is it? Anomaly Defense Division within Homeland Security on the Science and Technology Directorate. I don't think Homeland Security realizes they have this division, but I gave it to them. And so he has all sorts of psychic agents and genie hunters and all these other people that work for him, and he deploys them across the world where needed to protect the homeland. And so his sister is a horse whisperer, and Emma is called to a Mustang Ranch that's on the border of Wyoming and Montana, and it's a real ranch. I didn't use the name, but there is a real ranch. And she's called out there because a Mustang has been gunned down, and they don't have any videos of somebody coming and going. It's such a remote area. It'd be really unusual for someone to go out there just to shoot a horse. And so she goes out there and she's talking to the horses because she's actually a telepath. And the horse reveals to her visually that there was a drone, and a drone with a AR-15 mounted under it attacked the herd. And so as she's communing with the horse, she hears a drone coming and it shoots at her. There's a section that gets me though. This is a little rough. The horse gets between her and the drone and saves her life. So that's the very emotional start. But she calls her brother and tells him what's happened, and she's very upset, to put it mildly. And he thinks it might be a matter of Homeland Security, so he sends one of his agents out to work with her, or to take over the case. And she's not happy because she's ex-military, she was a Marine, and she can handle this herself, and she's not happy with her brother doing this. So when this tattooed biker shows up at her door, who just happens to be drop dead, handsome, sexy.
Of course.
She greets him with a shotgun.
Wow.
So that's their meeting. So that's their story, and they have to. It's
not your typical meet cute.
No, it's not. It's not your usual cute meet. No. So she's a badass and he's a badass, and they do a lot of badassery together. And they wind up, they have to pretend to be married to infiltrate a Nazi hate group that's taken up headquarters in northern Montana. And so, yeah, so I do a lot of topical material that I weave into my stories in addition to the paranormal. And I also have done significant amount of research on our history, our nation's history, in terms of using psychic soldiers. And there was a program called MKULTRA where they did have remote viewers and psychics that they used, and they had a lot of CIA involvement. I know I sound crazy, but there's actually a government report on this.
I've done some research on that too. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's so creepy. You're like, no, she must be out of her mind, but no, it's congressional record. And so anyway, that's why it's so, easy for us to think, well, maybe that never really went away, because even though they said they disbanded it in the 90s, because statistically the results were positive, but the field applications weren't good. I find that hard to believe. So I think they really just said, okay, Homeland Security, everything just kind of slides into there. So BURT is this brother who sort of shows up and has a sort of, if you remember Charlie's Angels, he's like Charlie, he's always telling the girls what to do, and the guys. And so, but he's this great, he's a wounded warrior. He was in Iraq, and he was his JAG rather, and he went to interrogate a detainee, and the village was abandoned, and he told his CO not to get out of the Jeep because he didn't think something was wrong. And there wasn't even like a goat out. This is not normal in Iraq. And so he stepped out of his Jeep and he stepped on an IED. So he loses both his legs, and he's in a wheelchair in all the stories until Eye of the Eagle, when he has a reason to change his lifestyle. But he's a shapeshifter. He's an eagle shapeshifter, and so he's always been in the background. The grandmother, the Native American medicine woman who cursed Lucius in the first book, is his ancestor, and she was an eagle shapeshifter. So he gets that from her, and so everybody who read the first two books were like, "So when's Burt gonna get a story? When's Burt gonna get a story?" And he deserves a romance. He's a really good guy. And so I said, well, I haven't come up with quite the right heroine for him yet. And so I was raised by my deaf grandmother. And so my mother shipped me off to very Southern foster family care. And very common among Southern families, you ship your kid off and they go, at least in my generation, they go live with a grandparent, aunt, whatever. And so my grandmother was really my mother, and she was still is my heroine. And so she was my inspiration for my heroine for Burt. And Phoebe is the daughter of a very powerful female U.S. senator. And I used an amalgam of powerful women senators to be her mother, not just one. Hasten to say that. And she's pretty spectacular. Phoebe is not only a deaf advocate and deaf herself, she's also an empath. And her first meeting with Burt is not a pleasant one because she's his new boss. And he's not happy that the new Undersecretary for Homeland Security is someone who has no intelligence experience whatsoever. And while they're having their first meeting in his office, and he's not happy, and she's not happy, and there's an interpreter there who doesn't know what the heck's going on, and then she finds out that he speaks sign language, but even so, in the middle of this, his phone rings, and it's a call from Lucius and Tallulah. Their toddler daughter Miriam has been abducted. So he flies to Billings to assist with the investigation, to go home to take care of his family. And Phoebe insists on going with him without revealing that she's an empath. So she has an opportunity to help him. But it's an exciting story. It was fun to write. I really enjoyed channeling my grandmother. My grandmother was spooky, smart, like she always knew what I was doing. So I think she probably was an empath, but she was really an amazing woman. She was institutionalized. She became deaf at 16 months, and this was in 1882. And she was institutionalized at Kentucky School for the Deaf, which was the first public school for the deaf in the country. And it was the second, I'm sorry. American School for the Deaf in Hartford was the first, but Kentucky was the second. And she was there from age 7 to 21, because this is what they did at the time.
Right.
And but her family had money, and so she was highly educated for a woman for the era. And she was sent to Washington, D.C. to work for a congressman because she had beautiful handwriting. She addressed all his envelopes to his constituents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she was gainfully employed, and unusual for a woman to have a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
She was introduced to on a blind date to a deaf guy named Carl. And Carl was a wild man. My grandfather was born deaf. He was congenitally deaf. He was the sixth child of a family of grocers. And he was handed over to the Department of the Interior when he was a child, he became a ward of the federal government because he fell into the feeble-minded category because he was deaf.
Mm.
Was not feeble-minded.
Mm.
And he went to Kenwood School, which was on the grounds of Gallaudet. The family history was like, oh, he went to Gallaudet. Well, not exactly. He was on the grounds of Gallaudet rather. And so he he rolls up on a motorcycle. He's a wild man. He's the antithesis of anything her moneyed family would want her to have. He was Catholic. You know,
Oh my
oh,
gosh.
Catholic. Oh my God, he's Catholic. And so she married him, and they disowned her. And they because she was supposed to come home and marry a first cousin and keep the money in the family.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were just beside themselves. I think they finally talked to her later on, but they had six hearing children. But he was a gardener, and this ne'er-do-well was one of the people planting the rose garden in the White House, and he was the second in command for the botanical gardens in Washington D.C.
Oh my goodness. And those,
In the Depression, when people were not eating, he
so some of the
was,
stuff he planted is probably still there.
yes, yeah, it probably is. So
Wow.
yeah, it's an amazing. I love that story. I love the fact that there was this unbelievable romance. He swept her off her feet. He was a wild man on a motorcycle. All this stuff is the stuff that romance has come out of. And so
Mm-hmm.
how could I not write romance,
Right. Well, and I think romance is, I grew up, my grandmother read Harlequin romances.
Mm-hmm.
And so those were my first experiences with the ravished breasts
Oh,
exposed on
yes,
the beach
yes.
and the pirates that would come and,
Oh, yes.
and the tail end of the book, like the time that I was with my grandmother or my grandmother's alive, was when Fabio came in. So she had a
Oh,
lot
fun.
of books with Fabio. Or not, was it? Yeah, it was Fabio, was the blonde,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so she had a lot
Yes,
of books with
Fabio,
him
yes.
on it. And I used to go in and sneak those books when she wasn't looking, and I would take them home and read them.
Yeah.
But the romance books I'm reading now, what I like, and what I try to do too, it sounds like is what you're doing, is they're more, the people are real people.
Yes.
And we do have the opportunity to add these different nuances into their lives. There will be, we're just now, a lot of the soldiers that were in the first Iraq war, I was in my second year of college, I think, when that happened the first time. And now that generation of men are old enough to start having children who are following in their footsteps. And we're learning so much more about all the different ways that affects everybody.
Yes.
And so so it was adding, a soldier who's in your stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great because that's what it is now. We don't have pirates riding up on the shore and taking the village women. We have real people, and that's why I like romance so much. I really do.
Yeah, I actually started in a crazy. I mean, I grew up reading sci-fi, mystery, horror, and so that's what I started in. And my first awards in short stories were in horror writing. And so, but I published a bunch of short stories in mystery and sci-fi. My husband claims I killed him in one of them. That's not true. But anyway, so, but that was, I enjoyed writing it, but the problem I was having was those three genres are really old boy networks. And
Oh yeah.
oh my God, I went to a horror boot camp, I won't say whose, and I was pretty much treated pretty badly by the person who was running it, a male. And I didn't really feel that it was developmental, as you would say as an educator. It was not constructive. And so I was talking to a friend of mine, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who's the mistress of the paranormal. If you ever want to find something on journalistic quality of the paranormal, she's the go-to person. And I said, I'm just so discouraged because I feel like I'm just spinning my wheels. And she said, every one of your stories has a romance in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really was like, I hadn't really noticed that, but I did. It was like even in the horror stories, it would be like a three-way love triangle where somebody dies, but I already had to kill somebody. And but she's like, yeah, the romance writers of America, they're really good at helping developing authors, and you can do stuff. And that's when I found romantic suspense and paranormal and sci-fi romance. I'm like, wait, paranormal, I can put it all under one umbrella. So I can take all this stuff and blend it. And I'm really, breaking the lines between the genres. And that was what was holding me up, I think, was that I had these artificial lines between them, but romance gives you the opportunity to break those walls. So very exciting.
Well, Sharon, I want to thank you for coming and talking with me today. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me. It was great being with you. Thank you so much.
And I will put down all Sharon's information below in the description part. But what I need for you to do, people, if you're watching this, is to hit the little bell and subscribe to this channel. That is the best way to know when I post a pop-up interview. Part of the fun of pop-up interviews is you never know when they're going to happen. They happen when it's convenient for me and when it's convenient for my speaker. So if you subscribe, you'll get an email and you'll always be able to stay up to date. If you're interested in being in a pop-up interview, go to my website, terriawilson.com, and click the little icon that says pop-up interview. That will send you to Google form and you can fill it out and I'll email you and we'll get in touch. Sharon, thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Have a good one.